Okay, so it has started recording. So let's start today's class. So we had a longish break because of your exam break. So before that, we were doing discrete valuation rings, and we must have done. We must have started discussing discrete valuation rings, and we must have done more generally for Dedekind rings, things like ramification index and residue degree and all those things. So let's recall those from the slides and start from there. So let me share the screen. Yeah, please confirm that you can see the slides.
Yes.
Yes.
Now
the Teams I can see.
Can you see the slides now?
No, sir. Like I cannot see. I can only see the Teams window.
Oh, really?
I can see it.
Oh, I think my net is slower.
Someone else can confirm?
I can see also.
You can see the slide, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now I can see. Sir. Yes.
Now everybody can see, no? Okay, so let's start. So today is lecture 12 and we will continue discussing DVR, discrete valuation rings. So last time we discussed the ramification index and residue degree and also norm of an ideal. So quickly, what were these things? So what is the setup? Setup as you have a Dedekind domain A, you have its quotient field K, you have a finite separable extension L, and you take the integral closure of A in that is B, and you are taking a prime ideal P downstairs, and then you are taking the ideal generated by P upstairs, and that will be B is also a Dedekind domain, so PB is an ideal there, and it can be factored as a product of prime ideals. So it will be like P1 power E1, P2 power E2, etc. And this E1, E2, etc. are called the ramification indices. And what is the residue degree? If capital P is a prime above small p, then you consider the fields B by P and A by P. It's a field because these are maximal ideals, so B by P and A by P, and that degree is called the residue degree. And we also discuss the norm of an ideal. This is a map from where to where. So you have the group of fractional ideals of A, and you have the group of fractional ideals of B. From IA to IB, you have the map A going to the ideal generated by A and B, and in the reverse direction, we introduce the norm map. So if you have a prime ideal P, capital P lying above small p, norm of capital P is small p power the residue degree of capital P over small p, and then extend it linearly, and you thus define the norm. So norm of a fractional ideal makes sense. And we also stated the connection between E, F and R. Can one of you recall what was this beautiful result? So if if PB is P1 power E1, P2 power E2, etc., PR power ER, then the EIs, FIs, and the degree of L over K, these are connected nicely, right? This is where we stopped last time. So the degree of L over K is the sum of all these EI, FI. So if A is Dedekind, K quotient field, L over K finite separable, B integral, usual notations, P is a prime, then summation. So what is EP? The notation EP is the ramification index of P over P, capital P over small p. So if you take the ramification index, multiply by the residue degree and sum over primes lying above P, this equals the degree of L over P. This we stated last time, and in particular, if the extension is Galois, then all the EPs are same and all the FPs are same, and there are R many of those, so you will get degree of L over K equal to EFR, E times F times R. In the Galois case, more generally you will get this. So let's prove this first. So let's start the proof of this. So first observation is you localize. Okay, so if you take the complement of this prime ideal P and if you localize, then you know that if PB is P1 power E1 etc. PR power ER, you can apply this homomorphism, and S inverse P, S inverse B will be this one. Everywhere you apply S inverse. And what is the conclusion from here? And we also know that all these S inverse PIs are distinct. We have seen this last time. It's easy anyway. And therefore the conclusion is in order to study ramification indices, you can localize and study. It doesn't change. Similarly, the residue degree also doesn't change because A by P is isomorphic to S inverse A by S inverse P, and similarly B by capital P is this. So in order to prove this statement, this is what we want to prove. We can assume, we can localize at P because the ramification index does not change. Residue degree also does not change, and degree of L over K is anyway degree of L over K. After localization also the quotient fields are the same. So in order to prove this, we can localize at P and assume that, so if you start with a Dedekind domain and if you localize at a prime ideal, what will you get? So if you start with the Dedekind domain and if you localize, any localization is also a Dedekind domain. So if you localize A subscript P is also a Dedekind domain for sure. And is that a local ring? AP is a local ring, right? So therefore there is a unique maximal ideal, and we know that if there are only finitely many prime ideals, then it is a PID. So therefore the local ring AP is also a PID because A is Dedekind. So it is a PID with a unique prime ideal, and therefore it's a DVR. That's the definition of a DVR. So you can assume that A is a DVR. In order to prove this result, you can assume that A is a DVR. Okay. So if we prove it for DVR, then we have proved it for any Dedekind domain. So this is a without loss of generality statement. We have reduced to the case of A being a DVR. So now assume it's a DVR. And also last time we have seen that if you have a free module M of rank N over a local ring A, so in particular DVR is a local ring, so this is applicable in our situation. If you have a local ring and if you take a free module M, then we have seen that M by PM is a vector space over A by P. And what was the dimension? M by PM, we saw that it's a vector space over A by P of dimension equal to
N.
N, the same N. So this needed an argument, and it's a Nakayama kind of argument, and it's the same dimension. So M by PM is a vector space of dimension N over the field A by P. So this is going to be used now. Because A is a DVR, it's a local ring, and I'm considering D as a module over A. And B as a module over A, is it free? Do you think that it is free?
What is B?
Huh?
What is the module over A?
B, capital B, the integral closure. This B you consider as a module over A, is it free? Why is it free? Because what we have proved is it's finitely generated under Noetherian and integrally closed, and as a corollary we have shown that if it's a PID, then it is free, right? Because finitely generated module over a PID is free, and we have checked that the rank is the rank of the degree of the extension. So B is free because A is a PID. DVR is a PID, right? Therefore, you can apply that theorem. This was theorem 1 of Lang, chapter 1, theorem 1. So you can apply that, and therefore by this result that we proved last time, B is free of over A of rank equal to L over K, degree of L over K. Okay. Therefore, it follows by this that B by PB is a vector space of dimension, vector space over A by P of dimension L over K. A slash missing here. So B by PB is a vector space over A by P of dimension equal to degree of L over K. Okay. Now, so we want to show that degree of L over K equal to summation EI Fi is what we want to show. So let's write PB equal to this, and we have to show that summation EI Fi is the degree of L over K. But degree of L over K you have realized as the dimension of this vector space B by PB over A by P. Okay. So we want to use this expression and we want to write B by PB in another form using this. But that you already know, right? It's Chinese remainder theorem. What is B by PB? B by PB is B by this thing. B by this thing. But what is B by this thing? That is Chinese remainder theorem, right?
B by B1 power P power.
It will be a direct product or direct sum of B by Pi power Ei. So you can check that there is a natural morphism from B by PB to B by Pi power Ei because of the containment. PB is contained in each of this, so you have a natural map and you can check the kernel. This is well defined, and therefore you have a homomorphism to the direct sum, and the kernel will be exactly PB. And this is surjective because of the Chinese remainder theorem, and you can check what the kernel is. Kernel is PB, and therefore you have an isomorphism. B by PB is isomorphic to direct sum of B by Pi power Ei, and this isomorphism is true as A by P vector spaces also. You can easily check that. So you have got an isomorphism of A by P vector spaces. On the one side you have B by PB. On the other side you have direct sum of B by Pi power Ei. What is the dimension of the left hand side over A by P? What is the dimension of the left hand side over A by P? It's equal to the degree of L over K. So in order to show that degree of L over K is summation Ei Fi, can you take a guess what should be our claim? Can you take the correct guess? What should we prove in order to finish the result? On the left hand side you have got the dimension is degree of L over K. On the right hand side you want to get the answer to be summation 1 to R Ei Fi. So what should be my claim?
So don't you already know that summation of EI Fi is L over K, degree of L over K?
Speak a bit louder, I can't hear you clearly.
So don't we already know that summation of EI Fi is degree of L over K?
How do we know that?
Oh, you are proving that right now.
I am proving that right now. That was stated last time and I recalled it in the first slide, and we are starting the proof. So this is where we ended last time, right? We stated this. We stated this connection. We did not prove it.
Oh, I thought we proved it.
No, we didn't prove it. We are proving it right now. Okay, so I'm starting the proof, and first claim is that you can localize and without loss of generality. The result is for a dedekind domain. Result is for A being dedekind. My first reduction step is you can assume that A is DVR. Okay. So A is DVR is assumed, and because of that, you know that the left hand side is. Because of that, you know that the left hand side. So this isomorphism is Chinese remainder theorem, and because of your assumption that it is DVR, this over A by P has dimension equal to L over K. So what should be my claim in order to prove that identity? L over K is
the dimension of the left hand side is summation EI Fi, right? That's what
the dimension of the left hand side is degree
right hand side
is degree of L over K, and we want to prove degree of L over K equal to summation Ei Fi. So what should be my claim?
So the degree of the right hand side is EI Fi, like each term.
Yes. So you have to show that the degree of the right hand side is summation Ei Fi, I mean, if you can show that, then you are done. So in order to show that the degree of the right hand side is summation EI Fi, what should be the most natural claim?
Show that the degree of each individual term is EIFI.
Yes, degree of each individual term, not each individual term, at the higher term is EIFI, as I varies. Okay, so we have to show that, so it's a very natural proof. There is a vector space isomorphism. On the one side, the dimension is the left hand side. On the other side, the dimension is the right hand side. So dimensions are same, and therefore you get this beautiful, very beautiful equality. Okay, so in order to prove the result, we show that the dimension of B by Pi power EI over A by P is EIFI, and that will finish the proof. So this is what we have to do, and this is easy. This is a very conceptual proof, easy. So by definition, you know that this degree is Fi. Agree? This is the definition of Fi. And we are going to claim that Pi power j by Pi power j plus 1 is isomorphic to B by Pi for each j. Fix an I, take Pi, and for each I, as j varies, so for each j, P power j by P power j plus 1, I will not repeat I, we are fixing an I. So P power j by P power j plus 1 is B by P. Do you remember that we have done this? How many of you remember that this is, anyway, this is something easy, but we have already done this when we were discussing periodic fields. So what will be the natural map? So this is done as, we did it as additive groups, but the same proof proves that as A by P vector spaces, these are isomorphic. So this we have seen in lecture 3 as additive groups, and the same proof works. And you can refer to that thing, but let me recall. So what you do is, you consider the map. Can one of you recall this proof? There is a natural map from capital B to P power j by P power j plus 1. What is that map? If you take an x, you multiply x by pi power j, where pi is a generator of this ideal. Every ideal is principal, right? Because you are in a DVR, it's a PID. So if you fix a generator pi, and map x to x times pi power j plus the coset, and you can check that the kernel is, this is surjective, is clearly surjective, and the kernel is precisely capital P. So that proves this isomorphism. This we have done already. So you have this isomorphism, and therefore you are done. Why? Because you want to prove that the dimension of this vector space is EIFI. And because of for each j, this quotient is this. So what you have to consider is, you consider this decreasing vector spaces, this containment of vector spaces. So you are interested in the dimension of this, but what you know is P power j by P power j plus 1, the dimension is Fi, right? P power j by P power j plus 1, the dimension is the dimension of this, but the dimension of this is Fi. And therefore you are done. Because if you have a sequence of vector spaces like this, what is the dimension of V over some field K? What is the dimension of V? In terms of these dimensions, what can you say? So suppose you have just V containing V1, then what is the dimension of V? Suppose only up to V1 you have. What is the dimension of V? It is the dimension of V by V1 plus
dimension of V1.
V1. Now you take, V1 containing V2. So what is dimension of V1? It is dimension of V1 by V2 plus dimension of V2. So continue like that.
Summation of dimension of Vi by Vi minus 1.
Yeah, except the last one where
Yeah, plus V minus 1.
Correct. So this is dimension of V by V1 plus dimension of V1 by V2 plus etc. And the last thing is this. And apply it to here. So you are interested in this dimension, and therefore it will be dimension of this quotient. What is the dimension of the first quotient? It is B by P power EI by PI by P power EI. So it is B by P. So that is Fi. And what is the dimension of the next quotient? It is p by p power e by p square by p power e. So that is p by p square. But p by p square is again b by p. So again it is fi. So each quotient is fi, and the last thing is also fi. Last thing is this. That's also fi. So each of these terms is fi. And how many times you are doing this? Exactly. Yeah, 1 to e minus 1 and 1 more. So exactly ei times. So you have a filtration of ei terms, and each successive quotient has dimension fi. Therefore, the total dimension by this formula is ei fi. So you are done. Therefore, this dimension is ei fi. So this is the proof. So it's a very beautiful proof. So conceptually, what are the significant steps in this proof? Starting with the result was about Dedekind domain, but by localization without loss of generality, you can assume that your ring is DVR, and once you are DVR, B by PB is a vector space over A by P of dimension equal to the degree of L over K, and by Chinese remainder theorem, it's isomorphic to a direct sum of vector spaces. As vector spaces, they are isomorphic, you should check. It's basically Chinese remainder theorem. And on one side you have got the dimension to be degree of L over K, and on the other side you have got the dimension to be summation EIFI, and that proves the result. So it's very good. Okay, so that's the main result that I wanted to do today. Now we will do some small things and maybe stop a bit earlier. So recall that we define the norm. So norm is a map from group of non-zero fractional ideals of B to the group of non-zero fractional ideals of A. And how did we define this? Can one of you recall the definition? First, we defined it for a prime ideal lying above a prime ideal. So norm of capital P is small p power the residue degree. So f subscript p is the residue degree of p over p. So norm of p is p power fp. This was a definition, and then we extended it multiplicatively. Earlier I said linearly, I meant multiplicatively. What you mean is any fractional ideal will be of the form p1 power e1, p2 power e2, etc., where ei's could be positive or negative or integers or zero. And extend the definition multiplicatively, so you have the norm map. Okay. So what would be norm of PB? Can you tell me what would be, if you start with an ideal, prime ideal downstairs, and if you go upstairs, you get PB, and you take its norm. Can you guess what this is? Guess or prove what this is?
P.
Yeah?
P.
A small p?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think it will be A actually. I think it will be A.
It will be?
Okay, I'm not sure.
No, but I didn't even hear you. Did you say small?
A. I said A.
A meaning the capital A, the ring A. No. It will be an ideal only. But what is that ideal is what we want. I mean, it will be a proper ideal. We would like to check what it is. But just see, what is PB?
Yeah.
PB you write as P1 power E1, etc. PR power ER. And what is norm of P1? Norm of capital P1. Norm of capital P1 will be P power
F1.
P power F1. And norm of capital P2 will be P power F2, etc. So you're extending it multiplicatively, right? So norm of this will be, so no.
P power F1 plus F2.
No, not P power F1, just pay attention. So PB is P1 power E1. Norm of P1 itself is P power F1. So what is norm of P power E1? Extending it multiplicatively.
P power summation EIFI, which is
P power summation EIFI. But what is summation EIFI?
Degree of
L over K. So this answer is P power degree of L over K. Clear? So we just proved that this is degree of P power L over K. Therefore, you can do instead of PB, you can take any fractional ideal A, right? And you can do the same thing multiplicatively. You will get norm of any ideal A any ideal A, if you take A, you can expand as P1 power, P1 times, etc. And you can do this because the definition was multiplicative. The answer is norm of AB is A power L over K. It's enough to do it for a prime ideal, and we have already done it. Okay. So this is the this is how norm works. So from IA to IB, you have this map, A going to AB, and if you apply norm the other way, so if you start with an A, go here, you will get AB, and if you apply norm, so these two are not inverses of each other, but there is a nice relation. If you start with an A, go here and come back, you are raising it to the correct power, A power L over K. You can also ask the other way. You start with something here, go there and come back. What will you get? So that also can be asked. Okay, let's do that in the Galois case where there is a nice answer. So suppose L over K is Galois, then all the primes lying above a prime are Galois conjugates, right? This we have done long ago. So this we proved in the very first or second class when we started chapter 1. So all these are Galois conjugates. So in particular, applying a Galois element to this factorization, what can you conclude? If you take a sigma from Galois L over K, and if you apply sigma of PB, what will you get? Sigma of PB will be sigma of PB, which is same as PB. So LHS doesn't change. And what will be the effect on the right hand side? Depending on, so you can choose a sigma such that beta 1 and beta 2 are interchanged. So you will get P1 power E1, P2 power E2, etc. equal to P2 power E1, P1 power E2. If you choose a sigma which interchanges P1 and P2. So from that you can conclude that E1 equal to E2 because factorization is unique. Okay, so similarly you can conclude that all the EIs are equal. So applying various sigma from the Galois group, you can conclude that all the EIs are equal. Let's call it the common number to be E. And similarly, B by Pi and B by Pj are also isomorphic as A by P vector spaces. Because if this is sigma of Pi, there is a sigma such that Pj is sigma of Pi, and X going to sigma of X is an isomorphism. So therefore Fi's are also equal. And therefore our result summation EIFI equal to degree of L over K will take the form EFR equal to L over K. Summation EIFI, R terms are there. Each EI is same E, each FI is same F. Therefore it is EF plus etc. R times, so that is EF times R. So you get this beautiful identity in the Galois case. Okay, all right. What can you say about this? So this is the other direction, right? So here you are starting with a capital P, apply norm, then do the reverse map. Take the ideal generated by norm of P in capital B. So do that, and you can see that this equals, so norm of P by definition is P power F. Meaning F subscript P. So this is P power F times B, and but you know what is yeah, so what is this? F is this common F because you are in the Galois case. But what is PB? PB is P1 power E, P2 power E, etc. PR power E. All is the same. So it is P1, P2, etc. PR whole power E. That is P. PB. So what will be P power FB? Multiplicative. So it will be P1, P2, etc. PR whole power EF. So you get this to be P1, etc. PR whole power EF. But the PIs are Galois conjugates. So all the primes lying above P are conjugates. So that is also product of sigma P. As sigma varies over the Galois group. You agree with this identities?
P power ES, right?
Say that again.
Shouldn't it be sigma P power ES?
No, because sigma might repeat also. Sigma P could fix P also. all possibilities are there. You know that.
Yeah, okay. EFR is equal to actually. EFR is equal to.
EFR is
the
equal
degree.
to the cardinality of the group. Okay. So this
But
is.
still, I'm not sure. Like, I can see why it might be correct, but why is it correct? This equal to.
Because I'm not saying this equal to this directly. I'm saying first this equal to this, and second I'm saying second, I'm saying this equal to this directly, because what you have is what you want is you have a P and you want to say, so PB will be primes lying above. Yeah, so there is a little bit to think about. So primes lying above P, and you know that the primes lying above P are all Galois conjugates, right? Primes lying above P are all Galois conjugates. So all these, so it follows from EFR equal to, so this follows from EFR equal to G, right? Because these are all the primes lying above P. All the distinct primes lying above P are P1, etc., PR.
Aren't we seeing the primes lying over P power F over here?
Yeah, that is what is giving you this.
Wow.
That is what is giving you this, right? Because otherwise it would have been P1 power E. Power F came because of P power F.
The prime lying over, actually the prime lying over P power F and the prime lying over P are the same, right? The primes, because if any prime
lying,
they're not the same, they are
prime lying above, that notion we have defined only for a prime ideal. So we don't usually say prime lying above P power F. Okay.
Yeah.
But everything is defined multiplicatively. So if you are doing, the norm is defined multiplicatively. So if you know that PB has P coming E times, then P power F, when you factorize that, capital P is coming E times F, that many times. So that's how you are getting this identity. Okay, but these are all the primes lying, these are the distinct primes lying above P, and each prime is repeating EF times. So these are all the primes lying above P anyway. So all the primes lying above P is same as you fix one of those and take Galois conjugates. Right? So this, Manav, is this clear now? If you fix a prime lying above P, let's say capital P, and if you take all the Galois conjugates, they are precisely all the primes lying above P. But what are all the primes lying above P? All the distinct primes lying above P are exactly this. And therefore, all the primes lying above P are precisely this.
So how do you know that each prime is repeated EF times? Like, did we see that on the previous page? Like,
yes. So each prime is repeated EF times in the factorization of this thing.
No, but in the primes lying over P, like each prime is repeated in sigma P, like there are EF sigmas such that sigma P is equal to P1.
That we know because we know EFR equal to degree of G. I mean the order of G, right? You're using that, right? What all you know is these are the distinct primes lying above P. So they are all Galois conjugates. That's all that you know. Okay.
So are they the only Galois conjugates?
These are the only Galois conjugates. These are the only Galois conjugates. These are all Galois conjugates, and these are the only Galois conjugates. This much you know. So there may be many sigmas which are fixing these P's also. Right? There may be many sigmas which are fixing this P, but that corresponds to taking this power. Because EFR is the cardinality of the Galois group.
No, but we are proving that each prime occurs EF times, right? We don't know that yet. Like maybe some prime occurs EF plus 1 times and some other prime occurs EF minus 1 times.
No, we are in the Galois case. There is no F1, F2, etc.
No, EF minus 1, like EF minus 1 times.
No, this one we have already proved, because in PB, P comes F times, E times. Therefore, in P power F, it comes E times EF times. So that's already proved. Because
yes, the next equality I'm talking about.
Next equality is okay, because what all we are saying is these are precisely the Galois conjugates, distinct Galois conjugates. So
Yes,
all the other sigmas will be fixing this. And if you take, see, what is the indexing set? Indexing set is degree of L over K, right?
Yeah, so it might be, yeah, so EFR, you were saying it's EFR, and that's why.
Yeah. See, it is this particular power. It is the power of EF, and EFR is precisely this indexing set. No.
Yes.
That's this identity, right?
Yeah, like I'm just thinking like EFR is equal to degree of L over K. That is fine.
Yeah.
But is this not possible? Like that this P1, P2, we know that what do small p, right?
Once again, you tell me.
We know that P1, P2, PR are the only primes lying over P, small p.
Yes.
So, and we know that there are EFR sigmas. Like in total, the number of sigmas is EFR.
Yes.
So it's possible that suppose R is 2 and let's say P1 and P2 we have. Only P1 and P2 are lying. Then isn't it possible that there are EF plus 1 sigmas, like just greater than EF, 1 greater than EF? There are EF plus 1 sigmas such that sigma P1 equal to P1, sigma P equal to P1, and EF minus 1 sigmas such that sigma P equal to P2. Then still the sum will be EFR, right? Like EF minus 1 plus EF plus 1 is 2EF.
So you give me a precise example. You are taking E to be 1, F to be 1, R equal to 2 in your example? No.
I'm just taking R to be 2.
R to be 2. So you have P1, P2 power EF. Yes. And you know that 2EF is the full thing.
Yeah, we know that 2EF is the full thing.
Yes. And now what are you saying?
So now say there are so 2EF is the full thing, right? So the
so you are writing
some sigmas take.
You are writing it as EF plus 1 plus EF minus 1.
Yes. So I'm saying suppose EF plus 1 sigmas take P to P1.
Okay, so you are saying that P1 comes to the power EF plus 1 and P2 comes to the power EF minus 1.
Yes, yes.
But okay, so what we know is that in this factorization that is not the case.
Yeah, that's what we want to prove they're equal, right? But in this case, the equality is not obvious, maybe.
Yeah, so maybe one more small argument you have to fill in, because the Galois case, what happens is again, you have to use Galois. See, between P1 and P2, there is no difference. They are Galois conjugates. So use that fact also. So you have P1 and P2, right? But you can say that as P and sigma of P, you can call it. Okay. So if you take this product of sigma P, it is basically P times, so let us say sigma, you take a distinguished element tau here. And suppose your ideals are P and tau of P and nothing else. That's your case, no? You're saying there are only two.
Yeah. So for every tau, there will be like a tau inverse.
Yeah.
They will correspond.
Correct. Therefore, you know that EF plus 1 and EF minus 1, that's not possible. Because everything is, symmetric by Galois conjugation, right? You will get P times tau of P power something. So what you are saying is P power EF plus 1 times tau of P power EF minus 1. but you can apply tau throughout. So this will not change, and here you will get a problem. So it has to be the same. Fine, no?
Yeah.
Manav?
Yes, it's fine.
Yeah. See, I have changed my usual place. So usually I used to sit in the balcony when it was a bit clearer. Now because of summer, I have come under the fan, and maybe because of the sound of the fan, it's a bit more difficult for me to hear. So you speak a bit louder than usual. Okay. So this you have, and meanwhile, in this discussion, you have also proved the following. You remember the decomposition group at a prime P? What is the decomposition group? Those are all the sigmas of the Galois group fixing P. So if you fix a P, and if you take its decomposition group, what is the order of the full Galois group? Order of the full Galois group is E times F times R. Decomposition group is a subgroup, so it should divide the order of the Galois group. And can you tell me what the order of the decomposition group is? So it should divide EFR, and there's a nice divisor which is the answer. And it is clear from this discussion that we just had.
R.
No. Sigma's fixing P.
Oh.
These are the distinct primes. There are R distinct primes.
Yeah. So
overall, there are EFR primes. Therefore, what is happening is EF many sigmas are fixing each of them. See, fixing one will fix everything else because everything else is conjugate. No. Right? So the number of Galois elements fixing a given P1 is EF. Agree? These are distinct. P1, etc., PR are distinct. So the total is EFR. So the decomposition group order is E times F. So this order is E times F. Is that okay? This is the discussion that we just finished.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is EF, and what should be my next question? You tell me what the next question is.
Inertia group.
Yeah, inertia group. And what should be its order? Inertia by definition is the kernel of this map, and note my arrow, it is surjective. Double arrow, double head. It is a surjective map we had proved. That was one of the main results that we have proved. And because it is surjective, what should be the order of the kernel? You know that the order of this is EF, and what is the order of this group? Order of this group is
R.
No. It's what are the three things that we define? R did not have a name. It is associated to splitting completely, etc. But it did not have a name. But E is called ramification index. And what is the name for F? English word for F? What is the English word for F?
So you just said it, right? Ramification index.
No, that is E. That is E.
What are you asking for? F.
F.
Residue class.
Residue degree. Residue field degree. So these are the residue fields. No. What is the meaning of residue field? If you have a local ring, then A by M is called the residue field, right? So this is the residue degree. So F is the degree of this extension, right? By definition. So what is the order of this Galois group? F. And the order of this is EF. So what is the order of the kernel? This is surjective. E. So what should be the order of the inertia? It is answer is E. So this is a very beautiful setup. In the Galois case, the full Galois group is of order EFR. The decomposition at any prime is of order EF, and the corresponding inertia is of order E. Okay, so very nicely these numbers are explained in terms of the structure of subgroups. Okay, so one more small thing let's do. Suppose P is principal. I'm not saying the whole thing is a PID, but this particular prime is principal. So let's say P is generated by var pi, pi, and what can you say about the norm of this ideal now? So you have the notion of norm of this ideal, you have the notion of norm of this element from last year from your field theory course. You want to take a guess how these two are related? This norm that we introduced and the norm that you already know, norm of an element. Take a guess. It can be right, it can be wrong.
Maybe pi power the degree.
That's a good guess, but not pi power degree. Pi power degree, see, norm of P will be in IA. It will be an ideal in A. So if you take pi power degree, etc., how do you know it is downstairs? That's why I'm saying you have the definition of a norm from field theory. No, norm of an element is product of all Galois conjugates. So you take norm there also. So norm of P and norm of pi. So let us see what it is. So what we know from last time is norm of P, the ideal generated in B by that is product of sigma P. Okay, as sigma varies. So therefore it follows that norm of P is norm of pi. Why is that? Because P is generated by pi. Okay, so the right hand side is what? Right hand side is sigma applied to pi and product of that and the ideal generated by that. Because each of this P is a principal ideal generated by pi. So sigma P will be generated by sigma pi. So product of sigma P will be generated by product of sigma pi, which is norm of pi. This just means product of sigma pi. So the right hand side is this. But left hand side is what? So what is clear is right hand side belongs to A. So because it belongs to A, this is same as this intersection A. But this intersection A is same as this. So you get this. Right? If you take an ideal P and if you go upstairs you get PB, and what is PB intersection A? That is same as P. So this intersection A is same as this. So you get this identity. So that is why we define norm appropriately by raising to the power F, because that is the definition that is matching with your norm from your last year's course. You know, it's the most natural thing. If this is a principal ideal, you can take the generator, take its norm and take the ideal generated by that, and that coincides with this. Okay. And the remark is that this can be extended to all principal fractional ideals. I don't have to take a prime ideal. Multiplicatively, you can do it to all principal fractional ideals. Moreover, you don't have to assume Galois. If it is only finite separable, you can go to the Galois closure and finish the proof there. So the result is true. This result is true for all fractional ideals whenever L over K is finite separable. You don't need Galois. Okay. So go to the Galois closure and prove it there. Okay. Now we will do one more important result and then stop there. So you are in a DVR and you are also, so I have the title Nakayama, meaning in the proof of this, the most crucial ingredient is Nakayama. So A is a DVR, so in local ring, easily you can apply Nakayama using the unique maximal ideal. So that will come. Quotient field is K, L over K is finite separable, and B is the integral closure of A in L. And remember, for this result, you are assuming that P is the only prime lying above P. Only then the result is true. Okay, then we can say something. So I want to say B is general. I want to write what precisely B is. So suppose P is the only prime lying above P, and everything, it's a PID, right? It's a DVR, so it's a PID. So assume that P is generated by pi, and let beta be an element of B such that beta bar, beta plus capital P generates this over this. This will be generated by a single element, no? Why is that? Because it's a finite extension. It's a finite separable extension. You're assuming this is separable anyway. Okay, so it's a finite separable extension, therefore primitive element. There will be some generator. Assume beta is one such. So beta plus P is generating this. Okay, and I'm going to claim that in this case, in this particular situation, this you know and this you know, I'm going to claim that B is generated over A as a ring in a finite way. You want to take a guess? Everything is there in the slide. I want to have a nice claim. What is the nicest claim that you can think of from this slide? I have written down two elements. One is pi and the other is beta, and I am going to claim that B is generated over A by these two elements. So we are going to claim that B is A bracket beta pi using beta and pi. So this is as a ring, meaning anything in B is a polynomial expression with coefficients in A, expressions in beta and pi. This is the claim. Okay, so let's prove this and then we will stop. So proof is Nakayama. Call the right hand side ring to be C. And what do we need to show? So C is contained in B, no? Because beta is in B and pi is also in B. So C is contained in B and we have to show C equal to B. But C equal to B is same as showing B by C is 0. So you have to show that B by C is 0 and B by C is a finitely generated module over A, right? Why is B by C finitely generated over A? Because B is finitely generated over A, which we have shown long back. So therefore B by C is also finitely generated. So how do you show B by C is 0 by Nakayama? You show that the maximal ideal, which we denote by small p, you show that small p times B by C is equal to B by C. So if you can show that small p times B by C equal to B by C, then by Nakayama B by C has to be 0 because B by C is finitely generated. So suffices to show that PB plus C equal to B, because this is same as showing P times B by C is B by C. That is same as showing this. So you have to show that B equal to PB plus C, and that's what we are going to show. And you know that there is only one prime lying above, so we are going to use that. So PB will be of the form P1 power E1, P2 power E2, etc. But there's only one prime. So it is of the form P power E. There's no other prime lying above. And using this, and by the earlier argument that we have written down, you know the dimension of this over A by P, it is E times F. But that argument also gives you a basis. You know that beta power I pi power j will generate this. Why is that? Because beta is such that this generates B by P. And under the isomorphism, if you look, what was the crucial isomorphism that we proved? P power j by P power j plus 1 is B by P power E. And what was the isomorphism? X going to X times pi power j. So under that, so beta power I pi power j will generate this vector space as I and j vary. Okay. So that means any x in B can be written as, so consider x plus P power E, and that can be expanded over A by P using these things. So any x, if you take, x can be written as summation alpha ij beta power I pi power j modulo PB. Right? This is P power modulo P power E, but that is same as PB. So where is alpha ij from? Alpha ij are from A. So in other words, you have shown that anything in B minus an element of PB is in C, because it is of the form A beta power I P power j, which is exactly C. If you can generate using beta and pi, then that is in C by definition of C. So x minus an element of this is in C. So in other words, x minus an element of this is in C. So So PB plus C is D, and therefore by Nakayama you are done. Okay, so this is a nice finite generation statement for a DVR under the assumption that there is only one prime lying above. So we will stop here and we can discuss a little bit. The lecture part is over and then we can stop. So let me stop sharing the screen. And if you have any question, we can discuss. We have some time, but maybe I can stop the recording.